Hey, my name's Jared Moon, and I'm part of a group of underground athletes you've probably never even heard of before. Most of us don't even have gym memberships. We don't have every piece of equipment known to man, nor do we have a ton of time to train. And we don't need it because we're achieving amazing things without it. We are garage gym athletes, and these are our stories. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Jared Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
Hey, what's up?
Not much. Welcoming everyone to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. We have a pretty interesting one today, something that's near and dear to both of our hearts. Nutritional topics, I think, are really good. Could get us heated, could get us going, and we could also give a lot of great information. So we're going to do that today. I'm going to start with the fact of the week since we're kind of in this nutritional space. I'm not going to quote any numbers or anything like that, but this kind of goes along with our fuels course that is running right now. And if you don't know this basic bit of information, it might be really helpful for you. But as your intensity increases, and this is primarily through heart rate, just your overall intensity. I'm not talking about like intensity of a 1 rep max necessarily, because that doesn't even have to jack up your heart rate most of the time. So real intense exercise. With intensity increases, your body utilization of carbohydrate also increases. So the more intense it is, the more carbohydrates you should probably consume. This is really maybe before or have consumed before you're like, 30, 40 minutes, an hour, whatever. Now, with the lower intensity, you could still use some carbohydrates, but then it starts to shift to fat or oxidative exercise. So lower intensity, your body wants to utilize more fat for energy instead of carbohydrate. And that's just a really basic principle. I'm going to talk more about this stuff when we get into some of the nutritional topics today. But I think that people should start to understand some of these very basic rules and concepts and how your body works. And it's going to help you make a lot better and more informed decisions on what you should eat and when you should eat it, as opposed to finding a supplement that someone said you should take or listening to blind nutritional advice. I think if you understand how a mechanism works in the body, you can make a lot better decisions about your nutrition. And I will talk a lot more about that today, but that's the basics of intensity, carbs, and fat.
Perfect.
Let's get into it, man. Give me an update. How are you doing? Still broken or less broken?
Less broken. Not fixed, but less broken. I had a bruised rib a couple weeks ago, so I haven't been able to do anything breathing heavily. So I've basically just been sitting on a bike for 30 minutes a day with some random accessory stuff in between. But I'm starting to be able to do more of that. I had a lacrosse game on this past Sunday, and I ran a crap ton. And my ribs kind of hurt after that, but I think I'm pretty fine now. So that kind of means I can start dialing things back up. Still haven't picked up anything weighted, anything on a barbell. So we'll see how that goes for, holding heavy things. Just did some farmer's carry, and that was about it, just to see if I don't want to push too fast, too hard. So that was that. I wore my Garmin for
Yeah, you got some new tech. Tell us about the new tech, man. So you're taking the Whoop off, you're throwing something else on. So let's hear about it.
Yeah, so I wore the Whoop for about a year and a half. I just got the Phoenix 5 I took the Whoop off about 6 weeks ago. Just got the Phoenix 5 about 2 weeks ago, right when I hurt myself. So that was great timing. So I haven't really been able to run too much, but I wore it for a lacrosse game and for the entire thing. And I got the data that you can get from it is awesome. I love the watch. It's super comfortable. I mostly wanted it for the GPS tracking because using Map My Run and on my phone and my watch, it was a pain in the butt. I would have like 3 apps open when I went to go do runs. And then I was also finding that I was getting 15 to 20% error margin on my distances, which is ridiculous.
Because you have an older Apple Watch, right?
Yeah, but if you start the runs on your phone, then it tracks on your phone. So it should still go off your phone's GPS versus the watch. And it was still getting a lot of errors. And then also Map My Run, whenever they do an update, you have to pretty much uninstall then reinstall the app on your watch, or else they won't really talk to each other very well. Like I'd start a run and it'd be 2.5 minutes before it's even showing up on my watch, so I can see any kind of pacing or anything. So it's just really annoying after every couple of months having to go through that.
Wow.
So yeah, Phoenix gets me gets me everything. It still has its own quirks, like doing any kind of strength it's not very good at, or like metcons and stuff. It's kind of hard to get good readings, but any kind of conditioning, it's fantastic, and just wearing it every day and all the tracking is great. Haven't done too many hikes, but I'm excited to do some hikes with it.
Yeah, that's my only complaint about the Whoop is having to be tied to your phone. If you're doing, I think it's great for training sessions, like, when you're in the garage, like not going anywhere. Like I love that data. I really love all the data that Whoop provides, but from I've been doing a lot more cycling, and when I was running, which I'm taking a break from right now, I'll talk a little bit more about that. That's the only thing, is I had to be tied to my phone in order to do that. And I love not having my phone on runs or not having my phone on a bike ride. I have the Apple Watch. I just got mine in December of 2018, and I haven't run into any of those problems. I use all the built-in Apple Watch features. I don't use any apps on my Apple Watch. I just use the GPS run that's built into the Apple Watch that Apple made. Mm-hmm. And those, I've been using that for cycling and running, and then you can download other apps, I think it's called Strides or something, that can kind of help you analyze that data a little bit better, because Apple's really lacking. But I love, for the same reason you love the Phoenix 5, I love being able to be phone free when you're doing some sort of distance exercise or something like that. Not hating on the Whoop. I still love the Whoop. I actually put it back on a few days ago because I'm trying to track some other stuff more accurately with sleep and caloric burn, but they all serve their purpose, and I think getting to experiment with a bunch of them is fun.
Yeah, Whoop is better tracking for sleep. I actually have to almost edit mine almost every day for the Garmin, but the conditioning and while you're training is awesome, because I've never really. I just recently started actually really paying attention to heart rate zones and percentages and stuff, and it'll tell you that as you're doing it, it'll tell you what zone you're in, and it'll break it down all completely in the app when you're done, and I'll see the percentages that I'm in on my watch as I'm going. So I think it's pretty great. That is awesome.
Yeah, and my biggest problem with the Apple Watch, and I'm throwing this out there because I want to see if any Garage Gym athlete has a solution to it, is so if I'm running or just doing a workout that has rounds in it, and I'm trying to time, okay, that took me a minute 23 this round 1, a minute 26 round 2. You can double tap your watch to do a segment on the Apple Watch. They call it a segment, not a lap or whatever. But it only will ever show you total time of the workout. And that frustrates the shit out of me, because I want to know what my current round time is. And you're not allowed to know that information until after that round is complete. I don't understand that at all. There's no other fitness watch on the planet that does that. Even the basic Ironman, if you're running laps and you lap, they show you total time and they show you lap time, because you need to know your lap time to adjust your pacing. Why they just completely missed the boat on that, baffles me. And so if anyone knows a solution to that, reach out to me however you want, email, Instagram. People still use Twitter. I don't use Twitter that much. However you want, and let me know if you have a solution to that. But that's been a huge issue for me.
Yeah, I haven't figured out what would be best to use on the Garmin for that, or even rounds and stuff. There's just, on the strength thing, it's a bit clunky, and so I haven't really figured out how to do those things. What else? I forgot what else you were talking about. For times for each. So when you do intervals, which is also great, because in the past ones I would just have to kind of estimate how each intervals go. When you program intervals on the watch, after you're done, it tells you every single interval what your pacing was and what your heart rate was for those intervals, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I was wearing that for the lacrosse game, and my heart was getting up way into the 90%, which is normally whenever we do things on the Airdyne, it is so hard for me to even get into the 80%. So that was interesting to see. And it also...
So you try harder. That means you try harder when there's an actual objective or mission involved.
Way harder.
When it's just training, you're I'm I don't feel like training today. See, I used to think your heart was broken. I was like, okay, like and you know, for anyone who's catching up here, Joe has like this ridiculously low heart rate. It's like in the 30s, very low 30s, his resting heart rate sometimes. But he couldn't achieve a very like, we're about 10 beats per minute difference. Like he can get to 32, I can get to 42. But then he would max out at like 195 max heart rate. I'd max out at 205. And so like we were always this 10 beats per minute difference, but he'd also had trouble getting into that 90%. And I was like, yeah, maybe I don't know what's wrong with your heart. I don't know. Like it's either a really good thing or a really bad thing, but I don't know why you can't get into 90%. And then you prove that you can get into 90%. You just have to really, really want to.
Yeah, I just have to be pretty much almost dead. Like jog and then sprint a bunch and then jog after sprinting and then sprint again. It's basically like doing a max heart rate test, but I'll still just get into the 90%.
Hey, at least you got there. That's important information, important data.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also told me that I can run 15 miles an hour. So I am part gazelle.
That was for a very short burst. Very short burst.
Nope. I got there a couple times.
I already laid out all the math for you on what 15 miles per hour means, and that is not a sustainable
pace. As it thinks, but yeah.
It's impressive. It's just not sustainable. So like I said, 6-minute mile pace is 10 miles per hour. And so you're running a 4-minute mile pace at 15 miles per hour, which is 60 seconds per 400, which is very doable.
But I'm done.
But like that's fast. You know? Okay, updates from me. Murph, update from last week. If you're following me on Instagram, you already saw what happened there. I ended up doing rowing Murph. So I am decided to go the smarter route. And you know what's amazing? My foot is like already almost 100%, like back to normal. Just like I have avoided running. I didn't force myself to do that Murph run, which was going to be the only run I was going to actually execute. I've been cycling in place of any other cardio otherwise following the programming, and my foot is already like way, way better. I mean, it's still a little bit tender, and I'm still doing some things to take care of that. But I know that, you know, I talked about a little bit of tendonitis in my knee too. I think that this stuff is all going to resolve itself really fast. And so I'm going to go ahead and say that you should always maybe go the smarter route. You know, I've chosen the dumb route a lot of times, like just push through. And especially, I have like this weird thing with this Murph project, man. I felt really uncomfortable rowing it. And I might even tack on like a double Murph or like a Murph at the end to make up for it. Because I might end up rowing one more just to get to like 100%. But man, I'm like, my body's like, thank you. We are going to now recover like at Wolverine-like speeds. And so I'm feeling a lot better and moving through.
My ribs after 2 or so weeks is way, way better. And that's just because I wasn't doing much at all.
Yeah. And I think you should obviously still be moving. We've talked about that before, and that's what you're doing. But, you know, resting from any weird contorted positions. And then the last update I have EO3 wise is the coaching course. So really it's the week this is published. We are really opening up applications for EO3 coaching, and that involves and entails a lot of different things. If you were to go to into3fitness.com, in the main menu, you can click on certification and you can read all about the Coach Accelerator program and what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I know a lot of Garage Gym athletes have been asking me about when this is opening, when we're doing it again. And we kind of have been doing case by case basis, but we're opening officially for everybody next week, and really starting the end of this week while we're recording, because I've been doing a few phone calls with people about it. So if you're interested, go check it out. If you're on the email list, you'll see more about that. Otherwise, just wanted to let people know in the Garage Gym athlete community that is coming your way. All right, now let's get into nutrition. We'll go into the study. I like to start with a disclaimer here because we're giving a lot of opinions. Joe and I have been into this stuff for a long time, but we don't have any official education, like degrees or anything like that in nutrition. We are not registered dietitians or anything like that. You know, we, as strength and conditioning coaches, you kind of get forced to learn a lot about nutrition to help athletes, even if you don't want to. Like you can't only have one piece of the puzzle, right? And I did spend the first 2 years in college as a food nutrition science major, but then not quickly, 2 years, changed my degree after that because I didn't want to do that anymore. So I have, but if you don't finish the degree, you don't get it like a consolation prize. So I don't actually have any credential there. So that's just, my disclaimers for when we're getting into all of these things and our recommendations. We've, at Garage Gym Athlete, Into 3 Fitness, we've worked with thousands of athletes and have worked with athletes on nutrition a lot. But I just want to throw those disclaimers out there because, I don't even really know who to listen to in nutrition anymore. So I'm just like, everything I do is really just like self-taught and like self-experimentation and everything else like that, because there's no dogmatic way of approaching nutrition that I think works or anything like that. So
that's probably the first point. Trust no one.
Yeah.
Do thorough research.
Exactly. So let's start with a study. I think this is going to be relatively short because what we have here, it's called Assessment of Nutrient Status in Athletes and the Need for Supplementation, Larson-Meyer, 2018. And so what they did, it's pretty interesting. They're going over, comprehensive nutritional assessments. And the main thing that they're really trying to point out, I'm going to point out like some of the major aspects of things that you might want to consider doing. And Joe, just feel free to chime in wherever you want, or, maybe something you found interesting. But I think we can go through the study relatively fast and then get into some of our topics and notes that we have surrounding nutrition. But the main reason I wanted to go over this study is because I want people to know that nutrition is far more complicated and individualized than you probably realize or are willing to realize. Like, some people act like nutrition, typically if you're naturally thin and lean, maybe from genetics or even just from training, however you got to where you are, and you don't put a lot of thought into nutrition, you have this bias that you think nutrition is super easy and that people are just complaining and all this other crap. But maybe you've never actually been in the other position where your genetics actually are working against you and you have a shit ton of work to do to try and reverse some of those things through epigenetics and high intensity training and diet changes and lifestyle changes. So, like I said, it's very highly individualized here, but it's also not the most complicated thing in the world, but it's also not the simplest thing. So let's get into some of the things that you should be thinking about, and then we can kind of unpack the complexity of it and the simplicity of it. I know that's a dichotomy, but it'll make more sense as we go through. All right, so things to take into consideration. Let's see. So body fat was a major one that they covered in this study. And that's basically what they're doing. They're talking about different assessments in this study on things that you should consider, either working with a professional or things you consider to assess where you actually stand as an athlete or human being in regards to your nutrition profile. And it's not just, hey, I'm overweight, give me a macronutrient breakdown, I'm good to go. There's a lot of other things. And so one of them is anthropometric, which just has to do with measuring the body, in a professional manner. And so I do think that having your body fat assessed is really important. And I don't think it's something that you need to do frequently, but having some sort of body fat assessment is really great, because you can train, you can do all sorts of different things, and your weight might not fluctuate a ton, especially like, what if you don't even want your weight to fluctuate that much, but your body comp can like almost completely change. We've had that happen to Garage Gym Athletes, and they've posted in the group about it before, like, like a 3-pound change in overall body weight. And then they had this like ridiculous body fat, body fat mass versus muscle mass index change, like with like a 8, 9, 10% difference, And so your body weight alone is such a shitty marker for, it's horrible. I hate it. I hate that, especially like it gets jammed into people's heads. Unfortunately, heavily on the female side, like you should weigh this much or whatever. Like, people's minds have been messed with when weight on the scale is a horrible marker. In fact, it's not even covered. It's not even really covered in this. Like, you should maybe know it to some degree, but body fat percentage is way more important. And then there are a couple of different methods. I'll talk about how to measure your body fat, but did you have anything else you want to say about this topic?
Not on measuring body fat, no.
Okay, so there are a couple different ways that you can do it. There's underwater weighing, which I've never done. You ever done that one?
I've never done any of these tests.
Okay, have you never done a bod pod?
Nope, I've wanted to, but just haven't been able to do it. Haven't done the pinch either. Best I've done is my at-home scale. Just measures it through your feet.
Yeah. So there's underwater weighing, which is really for most people not going to be realistic. I think you could do that though. Bod pod, I've done a few times. So they put you in this like capsule, and then they pressurize it, and then the displacement of the air determines how much body fat you have. That one's a little bit more realistic. A lot of places, gyms and other facilities have those. You could pay to get that one done, and it's fairly easy to do. There's a DEXA scan, which a lot of people like to say is the gold standard, but like it's literally x-rays. And they actually say, hey, no more than 4 scans per year because of the cumulative radiation exposure. And so I've never done a DEXA scan, nor do I plan on doing one because I don't want to subject my body to unnecessary radiation for just knowing my body fat percentage. So
yeah, it's not that serious.
If DEXA scan is like something that you're considering or do often, maybe stop. There are other options. You can do bod pod, underwater weighing if you can find it. Then there's bioelectrical impedance. There we go. Which is what you're doing. You're talking about that scale.
Yeah.
So the electricity shoots up through your feet and it tries to find resistance. That one's like wildly inaccurate. I think they say specifically.
Yeah.
It says one of the least accurate methods, unreliable when measuring individual changes over time because it's very sensitive to changes in hydration. Impacted by proximity to training, alcohol, food consumption. So if you do use that scale one, like a lot of these other ones, it's true, but you just need to be doing it at the same time every single day under the same circumstances. And then you look for the delta, the change. So this is the same thing I tell with people using any sort of wearable, like a Whoop or whatever. Like, don't get caught up in the fact that it's like we had one athlete who was super worried about how much deep sleep he was getting, right? I think, do you remember that one? He's like, I'm not getting near enough deep sleep, the Whoop says, and like I'm worried about it. But these things might not be that accurate on deep sleep. Mm-hmm. And so all I'm looking for is the change after I know the baseline, if that makes sense. So if it's saying I'm sleeping 5 minutes of deep sleep, which would be horrible every night, and let's say it's 10 minutes or whatever, and then but it's 10 minutes every night. I'm like, well, okay, there's consistency there. I don't know if it's relevant data, but there's consistency because if the thing you're using to measure it is off, hopefully it's off by the right percentage, or at least it's inaccurate, to the same proportion. If that
consistently inaccurate,
yeah. So that way, if you see something, if it jumps down from 10 to 1. And you're like, and yeah, that next day you wake up feeling like shit. You're like, I only got 1 minute of deep sleep. And this is a horrible example on minutes, by the way. I'm just trying to throw out something for people to understand. That's how these electrical scales could work. Is like, it might say that you're 20% body fat, which could be off by anywhere from 10 to 15%, which is hilarious. But at least you have some sort of baseline. You'll know if you're moving in the right direction or wrong direction because it should be, as you said, consistently inaccurate. And then the last one is skin fold thickness. So this is old school. This is actually what they taught. To be honest, I don't know if they still, I think they do, but this is a lot of certified personal trainer courses. They teach I think it's the 3-fold and the 9-fold skin pinch test methods. So you get the calipers and there are different points on the body that you pinch, and then you accumulate that data to find body fat percentage. And what's interesting is they said if this is done by a professional, not a certified personal trainer, but a anthropometrist, which I'd never heard of until I read this. I didn't know that was a thing. They are actually, that is like the most accurate method. And it has very little downside. So I don't know where you could get one of those or how you become one of these people or whatever, but like I would do that, or to be honest, bod pod's real easy. So one of those, and I think that's a great thing to know. But Another thing that they noted was just the fact that these things can be so wildly, let's see, it says, like, none of these things don't ensure that subsequent tests are performed. You have to make sure that they are performed at the same time of day, in the same proximity to training, under similar dietary conditions, with similar hydration status, for women, similar phase of the menstrual cycles, and you could still be looking at plus or minus 10% variation, or 2%. If you have everything dialed in, it's a 2% error rate. If nothing's dialed in, it could be 10% variation, no matter which one you're doing.
Yeah, so I think just fat scans in general, don't base everything off of those because of the inaccuracy, but also, I mean, it's just good to, I guess, longer periodically to do it. But I don't find them as important. Like, as you know, I've never even done one, but it's just one little tool that can be used. Yeah,
I've done them just out of, like, literally curiosity. Like, I've never been like, you know what, I want to get to 4% body fat. Like, I've done them out of curiosity. But if you want to do it, just try and keep some of those things in mind. Don't pump yourself full of a bunch of x-rays, and then try and stay consistent as possible with timing, nutrition, training, everything when you do it now. And then if you do it again in 12 weeks, just make sure all those things are super consistent. All right, next is biochemical. Yeah.
This is just, they're just looking at micronutrients on this.
Yeah, pretty much. And so getting a blood test done, and checking out, really, I think that you should check out your, like, hormone levels, and then also, micronutrient profiles. And that's why I kind of threw out that disclaimer at the beginning of this is getting into the medical doctor field. So I'm not going to tell you what your level should be or anything, but you could do a lot of research on that. The only thing I will, advise people on or tell you is that if you are within normal limits, I don't know how well known this is. If you're within normal limits, that is based off of, like, an average of the populace of all the blood tests that, like, have been run. So, for instance, they just recently lowered the max level of testosterone of, like, what an acceptable level is, because men in general right now our testosterone levels as a population are tanking. And there are a lot of theories behind it, with the products we use, to the lack of sleep that we get, to shitty our diets are, the fact that we don't exercise, like, all these, that could be an entirely different podcast, but they actually lowered it. So now, like, say my testosterone levels were really good and high, 5 years ago, I was like, good. And now they're like, oh, that's kind of high. You know what I mean? So you have to, like, take these things into consideration. That's the same with any hormonal level or vitamin level. They're like, no, you're good. You're within normal limits. You're like, I don't want to be within normal limits. I want to be within optimal limits. And so within optimal limits, how are you going to find that out? Well, you're probably going to need to talk to, like, a functional med doc, something like that. Someone who's doing functional medicine, who maybe someone who even works with athletes, more regularly, and at least getting it reviewed by them. They don't have to be your doctor permanently, but be like, hey, I got this blood test. My generic doc in a box says I'm good, which is awesome, but how am I for, like, being optimal? And so that's my only recommendation on blood tests. All right. The next is clinical.
Basically just a full physical.
Yeah, seems. And this is pretty interesting stuff. And so this is why you probably, might want to, at some point in your life, see, a dietitian or a physician or something who deals with, who has experience in training and sports and nutrition and things like that. But let me read some of the things that they had. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different clinical indicators of nutrition deficiencies just through body systems. So they'll take a look at your scalp and your hair and tell you, what their expected outcome is versus a sign of malnutrition. So is your hair easily pluckable, sparse hair? That means you probably have a protein, biotin, and zinc malnutrition. And there are other things, like with your eyes and their colors and your mouth and things going on with that. So, like, your skin and colors and how it reacts to being tugged on and, like, all these things, like, pretty in-depth stuff that they're just going to do a physical exam on you and then, write down their little findings, and then find out, like, oh yeah, you're low on iodine, your thyroid's jacked up, because they were looking at your neck or something. So these things are just really complicated. I'm not going to go over all of those. There are just a lot of different things that you could look at to see how your nutrition is doing. And this,
and that could just go right along with getting a full blood panel. That's what I did earlier this year in the spring. Got a full blood panel. Then when I went to go talk about the levels, I got a full physical. So knock it all out at once, and then I can use that for future appointments and to make adjustments how I need from there.
Yeah, get a good baseline, and then just same with wearing these wearables that we're talking about, Whoop and everything else, is like get that baseline. If you like the baseline, just try and keep the baseline. But if you're like, no, I want a lower resting heart rate and higher heart rate variability, okay, what are you going to do in your life to actually change that? So same with blood work. It's like, do something about it. If you don't like where something's at, you're in control of those things. It's just going to take more personalized research on your specific issue. Because I can't tell you to go consume more iron when I have that's so specific to an individual. We can't say that to somebody. And then is this the last one? Dietary. Yeah, which is just the actual, oh no, there are two more. What you actually eat. Pretty simple. Like having some sort of dietary or nutritional log, to find out your averages. But did you see the chart on number of days of diet records needed to determine average intake in individuals?
I wasn't sure what that was.
So it's kind of crazy. So what they put together was how many days of data they need before they feel comfortable saying that they have an average intake for one person. So for men, on average, it takes 23 days of logging for them to find out what they're comfortable. This is most likely how much protein you normally consume. But one of them was, it said
vitamin A,
390 days. It's just insane. And then they have a lot of other stuff, saturated fat, but on average, it looks like it's just longer than you think, is what I would say. So I think if you wanted to log your food every day, and because you can do that in MyFitnessPal or MyMacros+, and a lot of it will even give you micronutrient breakdowns because they already have those records in their database. And so I would say probably 60 to 90 days, in all honesty, based off of the numbers I'm looking at here. 60 to 90 days worth of tracking everything that goes into your mouth and then averaging out, okay, this is about my protein intake. And this is only if you're not trying to follow a plan, right? If you're just eat whatever you want within reason, but you're not following a macro plan, and see what your averages are, you'll probably find out that if you're like most Americans, that you're low in protein and high in carbohydrate, and fat is either going to be high or low, depending on your internal belief about fat. And so that's typically what I think people will discover, but just know that it takes a lot longer than you'd expect. And then the last one, environmental. It said something like, stuff like education, socioeconomic status, and other lifestyle and social factors can have large impacts on nutrition. This is unfortunate, but true, man. If you are poor, you're not worried about grass-fed meat, or you might not be worried about nutrition at all. What if you're just trying to find your next meal, and there's just a lot that comes with it. I think Maslow's hierarchy of needs is kind of true. The fact that we get to focus so much on fitness and nutrition is because we have all our other needs taken care of, right? But if we were in some much worse off situation or something like that, we wouldn't be able to focus on these things.
Also, but government regulation, U.S. actually has a pretty terrible regulation on food, or standard, compared to Europe and stuff.
Oh, you're talking about things they allow and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always surprised at that. And it kind of pisses me off too, because Europe will be like, yeah, we're outlawing this ingredient because we're pretty confident it causes cancer and it's really bad. And America will be like, yeah,
it's going to cause this company to lose money, so no.
Yeah. So yeah, that one of my investors might not be too happy about that, or one of my political backers might not be too happy about that. So we're just going to keep it in there. How about that? But I'll stop eating it because I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty. Yeah. I'll stay away from politics. But man, pretty jacked up. And And then the most interesting step before we're kind of done here, it's like almost one of their last takeaways. They're talking about how a lot of people reach out for nutrition help when they are not fully committed to doing it. And
nutrition's hard. It actually takes work.
It's funny. It's like they were saying a lot of people, like they broke down all these stages, whether you're contemplation, preparation, action, or maintenance and relapse, which all of those make sense just by hearing it. You're thinking about doing it. It was like you're thinking about doing it. You're thinking about doing it. You're doing it. You're taking action on it. Then you've achieved your goal and you're more in the maintenance phase. That's kind of the different strategies. But they're saying a lot of people reach out to nutritionists, dietitians, and they're not really ready to take action. They just know it's a scratch that needs to be itched, and they reach out to a professional, but they have no real goal of like doing it. They're just like, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to hire this person, but I don't actually plan on making any changes. And I can tell you, as a coach, that happens often.
Yeah.
It's like people have paid for something, so they feel like that opportunity or that problem has now been fulfilled, right? They're like, I have a fitness problem. I pay for Garage Gym Athlete, fitness problem solved. Well, no, there's the work part. You have to do the work that we prescribe in order for it to actually be beneficial for you. You can't just pay the monthly subscription and expect to get fitter through osmosis, right? Like this is very basic stuff, but this is like psychological things that people deal with. They don't even realize they're doing. So I think it's something just to bring people's attention to, like, do you really want it? Or do you just kind of want it?
Yeah. Like, I want to lose weight, but I really don't want to give up pizza and beer. I get some form of that question on a weekly basis. Yeah. And it's very frustrating. Like, if you want your pizza and beer, by all means, have your pizza and beer. I'm cool with that. Like, that is your choice. Just be real.
Yeah, if you want to have that, have it. But it was very specific. I know you remember it because it was just like a few weeks ago. Someone reached out to us and they were like, absurdly contradicting goals. Like, I want to be ridiculously strong, ridiculously fast, ridiculously low body fat. I want to eat pizza. I want to drink beer. I want to like not sleep well. Like and I'm like, and
I can only train 3 days a week.
Yeah. That was actually, yeah. I'm like, okay. I almost don't even know what to say to you because I think that you're punking me right now. But it turns out this individual was not punking us, and that was like a realistic request. And I had to just go into educator mode and be like, okay, well, basically everything you said contradicts each other. And so, no, we can't help you do that. And no one can, but you can go like shop around and maybe you'll find someone who will at least tell you they can do that. But it's not capable for a human to have your cake and eat it too, right? Like you can't do it. All right. And so that was just some things to take away for the Garage Gym Athlete. Is my main takeaway is nutrition is simple in the fact that you need to eat clean. Like, I think we all agree with that. Unprocessed foods with adequate amounts of protein, vegetables, things like that. These things we know. But the real takeaway is that nutrition is 100% individualized. And so the simple part I was saying, it's simple because if you are eating your vegetables, you're not eating in excess, and you're eating clean, unprocessed foods, like, I really think 90% of your issues are covered. Now, it's complex in the fact that if you have some sort of issue or nutritional deficiency, there are a lot of things that you can do. Like you can get, are your environmental situations right? Do you need to do food logging to check out your actual stuff? Do you need to get a clinical exam? Do you need to do some blood panel stuff? Like, do you need to have someone measure your body fat? There are a lot of things that you need to do in order to truly dive into these nutrition things. And it gets really complicated if you do have any sort of issue. So macros aren't going to fix any of the problems that we just talked about necessarily. Like, macros can help you change your body composition, but if you have something else going on, environmental or a micronutrient deficiency, then that's not necessarily going to be helpful. And that was a huge problem when I started, because I started more on the bodybuilding side of things, where macros were way more normal. Like, macros are kind of new to people in this functional fitness space, but in bodybuilding, it's just 100% standard. But I actually, after I learned macros as like a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, I was like, why on earth would I eat broccoli? not from like a health standpoint. Like obviously I wasn't even thinking about that stuff at all, but I would sit down and write down a macro plan for myself, and I'd be like, broccoli like seems like a huge waste of time. There's basically nothing in it. Like I could eat, if I need carbs, I could eat, oatmeal or something else that's going to get carbohydrates way faster in smaller amounts. Like that's how my brain was working. And that's the macro problem, right? That's where when people get too focused on macros, they're like, if it fits my macros, I'll just eat whatever the hell I want. Well, if you do that at the expense of your micronutrients, hello, poor health. So just be mindful of those things.
Yeah. You see those pictures on Instagram. It's like the end of their week, and they're finishing all their macros for the week. And it's like, okay, I'm going to have this sundae with candy sprinkled on it because it fits my macros. Like, how is that good?
And don't worry, it won't cause any inflammation in your body, which is like the leading cause of disease. Sarcasm noted there. Like, there's so many other things that you have to take into account. Okay, so we wanted to kind of hop into the topic, talking about some.
I have.
Oh, go ahead.
Closing remarks on the study.
Got it. Go.
So how I kind of took away from the study is different ways to assess one's nutrition and one's how to change one's diet. So like athletes are your own goals. Everyone's nutrition is individualized. It's like a fingerprint. Your gut, everything like that. Everyone is starting in a different spot, and everyone wants to go to a different spot. So these are just different methods to pick out. Okay, which one should you do when to go where. So it's not like you need to do all of them or there's one greater than the other. It depends on your situation and what you need to get worked out and get done. They didn't. I don't know why they didn't for this, but also getting a gut bacteria test, to testing that stuff is highly important. They even do those genetic ones where it tells you what you're sensitive to help. So those I highly recommend. And also that. I think it might have been noted in this one or a different one that they were writing up, but that supplements are not fully tested or even reviewed. And most supplements that you'll find, it says this was not approved by the FDA or tested by the FDA. It's just, you basically have to take their word for it. And I know when you research supplements, there's certain sites you can go to that can test purities of stuff. But with that, it's, if you want, if compound A causes B, which then causes C, and you want C, that doesn't mean you need to take a whole bunch of A. It's going to cause C. It's not, doesn't always work like that with supplements. But yeah, you always want to get the purity as well, and that's just a whole different nutshell, though.
There is no way to shortcut a biological process that doesn't have a cost.
Yeah.
So if you want, and so I'm talking about supplementation here. If you want, like Joe's talking about, like this helps A, so I'm going to take A, and so you load up on whatever supplement it is that's supposed to help that. You just knocked the legs out from something else in your body. Like you inhibited some sort of hormone production. You did something. Like supplements are very crazy. And so I've done a lot of research on supplements, and I can summarize everything that you need to know. Don't take them for the most part. Don't take supplements. The only supplements I would recommend, and the ones that have a lot of data behind them that seem to be safe: protein, caffeine, and creatine. I don't take all of those. I do consume coffee that has caffeine. I don't take any sort of caffeine outside of that, nor would I. I do consume a protein supplement. I went on creatine a little bit last year, but it's not something I constantly want to be doing. And that's basically it in the world of supplements that seem to be very safe with very little negative side effects. And so and then in the protein world, you could get to what's clean and what's good and what's bad and all that other stuff. But anything outside of those three probably aren't going to really be worth it. Like we've talked about turmeric, things like that, but you can get that in your food, and you can
spice.
Yeah. I don't know if people know that. Like you can go buy turmeric, at the actual plant, and just consume it. There are a lot of other ways to do this instead of always having to supplement these things. The only other supplement I do consume, but I don't think is 100% necessary, is magnesium. And that's just because I don't think that I'm eating a lot of foods that are high in magnesium, and apparently need a lot of it. So, but again, that was me sidestepping there's been a lot of research and these are proven really effective and safe. I'm not even saying that about magnesium. I don't actually know. I just know that I take it from time to time, not a daily thing. Man, we could just talk. We could go down so many rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into kind of the first steps you should take in nutrition, in making diet change, how to educate yourself, books you could read, and things that you should do. And I think Joe and I have very different views on this, but very complementary. I think they'll work together very well. They're not contradictory; they're complementary. So I'll let you go first, man, with any tips and tricks you have for everybody.
So the biggest one that people should need to do, and think of is addition by subtraction. And that doesn't mean, okay, eat less. It's eat cleaner. Get out the junk that you have, anything that has a label, anything processed. Just addition by subtraction. Just eat clean. You could probably even some people might even be able to go onto like a caloric surplus, and if they're eating clean, they could even lose weight just because you're clean. You're not eating junk, and it's not causing all this inflammation in your body. So that's probably the biggest one that I've come across. Would you somewhat agree?
Yeah, 100%. That's what, I was kind of saying that earlier, is I think if you eat fruits and vegetables in adequate amounts every day, and you have adequate amount of protein, you're avoiding processed foods, I think 90% of your problems are going to be handled. Not right away. Like bodies change slowly, but I think if you could at least do those things and not worry about so much other things. That's why we went over all this stuff where people's heads are spinning and like, wow, nutrition is really complicated. It's like, really, if you have a problem, it's complicated. But if you don't have any problems, it's actually really simple. Yeah. So yeah, I agree.
And to take that even further is that, okay, so first step is eating clean, but so a lot of people really want to, especially this year, people just want to, okay, clean. I'm going to start eating keto because, first step, why not just jump all the way to there? But you don't need to make those big changes. There's also any kind of fad diet. Really, you don't need. Your first step shouldn't be to join some sort of diet with restrictions. If you're already making a change, you don't want to set yourself for failure and make a whole bunch of different changes. So just doing clean first and seeing what works. There was a really good. I saw this 2 weeks ago. Somebody posted it. It was a metaphor for your pet. It said, when you take your pet to the vet and they are overweight, your vet recommends that they eat a cleaner food and eat less food. They don't put your pet on, exercise. They don't put your pet on keto. They don't have them do intermittent fasting or any kind of cleanse. They just better food, less food, with some exercise.
Yep.
Simple.
Yeah, it really is that simple. Unless it's hard for me to have the nutritional conversation now these days without talking about EO3 elements. I'm not going to because we did an entire podcast about it. So if you missed the EO3 elements, scroll back a few episodes. I mean, that was like one of the first ones we did in this new format. But if you get all those things dialed in, I 100% agree with you. Like the only case in which I wouldn't agree is if you're like sleeping 3 hours per night but your diet's clean. Like everything balances each other out. Mm-hmm. And so that's why, because I've run into that with athletes before where their training is great. They dialed in their nutrition. They're not seeing results. And then we find out that, like, seriously, you sleep 3.5 hours a night. Like, why did you not tell me this until now? Why? Bad on me for not asking or being more intrusive about it. But yeah, everything does work in a delicate balance, but it is pretty simple at that point.
Yeah. And that's also when you can get caught up into marketing tricks and tactics and, not all these quick diets, quick fixes you mentioned earlier. There's no quick fix to those types of things, but it's one of the easiest things to prey on people for, because changing your diet and nutrition, it sucks. It's uncomfortable. Your body's going to hate you for the first 2 weeks. Your mind is literally working against you for the first 2 weeks to tell you, oh no, you need to go back to eat all these things that I liked before and I had before. So marketers are easy to jump on that because it's an uncomfortable, unsexy process, but just leave all that stuff out. Yeah.
And to just hit on what you're talking about, like the first 2 weeks or whatever, there are also a ton of hormonal changes happening. So it's not just like you have a weak brain. It's not like, oh, I'm not very mentally tough, I can't handle a diet. Like there are a lot of hormonal changes happening because your body, like Joe just said, is actually fighting against you. It's like, what the hell is going on? And it's doing everything in its power to signal your brain that it needs more food, it needs to do this, it needs to do that. So those chemical processes are actually occurring. And so that's why it's so difficult. But if you make it past it, you win,
Yeah. And you might dive more into those weeds depending on what you're going into. But I can't think of if it was in a book or a study or what, but some of the hyper stimulated over processed foods is almost like a drug, and it reacts the same way that drugs do to your brain.
Yeah.
So when you're
like
a drug
sugar
addict,
specifically,
and you take away that drug, then your body goes through withdrawals, and that's what happens with certain foods and over processed foods.
Yeah, I've heard of people getting the shakes coming off of sugar, like their handshake. I'm like, I've never been that addicted to sugar. I'm glad, but it's very possible once you try and cut it completely out. Let me throw in some stuff. So we talked about clean eating, and so I'm gonna take like a kind of a different approach because this has to do with my entire nutritional journey over the last 10, 15 years, whatever it's been. I've always been heavily into these things, and I think I don't want people to tune out as soon as I say it, but I think that people should look into, just briefly, bioenergetics. So I think that you should just understand the basics of bioenergetics, because I really think, and this has to go back with the courses I'm taking, later this year or next month now at this point. Wow.
In your Harvard medical degree.
Right. So like, I want to know, I need to know more why behind things to better answer questions. I don't need to know a new diet. I need to know why. I need to know more about, glycolysis. I need to know, those are the kind of things I need. Now, I don't think everyone needs to go to that level of detail, but if you have a very basic understanding of bioenergetics, which is essentially how your body uses fuel to turn into energy, you're going to understand a lot more than everyone else. And it's also going to affect your decisions on what you decide to consume. And I think just even a basic understanding that, and I'm not going to help you understand it right this second, just something that you should go explore. Bioenergetics, just the very basic level of it. You don't need a degree. You don't need to buy books, but maybe read a good internet article on bioenergetics at least to understand some of that. And you will understand basic fueling needs, and it'll help you make a lot of decisions. That way you don't have to listen to someone when they say, you should consume 300 grams of carbohydrates or 200 grams of protein, or this, that. Like, you're going to be able to better answer that question for yourself because you know a little bit more of the why behind things. And that's probably my overarching theme, is knowing the why behind a lot of the stuff so you can make more informed decisions as opposed to being handed a rule and follow this rule. So I think bioenergetics is a great place to start. Let's see. Another thing I had was, I think, understanding hormonal roles to some degree. Primarily, I'll say insulin is the only one. And so, see, I'm kind of getting more into the weeds, but I'm not. Well, there's 1,000 different hormones that we could talk about. I think the two hormones that you should learn more about is going to be insulin and cortisol. And if those are the only two that you did any research on, I would do those. And this is me, like I was saying, like I'm on the other end of the spectrum now. I've had to learn all this crap to look backwards and say, hey, what could I tell someone else who's like more at the beginning of this stage? What could I have at least told myself? I would have told myself to dive more into bioenergetics and understand the why behind a lot of stuff. And then if I only needed to understand two hormones really well, it would be insulin and it would also be cortisol. Because insulin, your blood sugar gets too high, your body secretes insulin, try and bring it back down. But that causes a shit ton of issues, and insulin sensitivity and like all these things. So understanding how that hormone works, how it breaks, how to maintain, adequate levels, all of those things, understanding that really well is a phenomenal path to health. The second one, cortisol, we've already talked about. We talked about it in EO3 Elements. But if you know how to control your cortisol, how to regulate it, and what affects it, those are going to be huge steps into you getting the body that you want and seeing the results that you want, because you can follow all these other rules. You could follow keto, you could follow paleo, you could follow just clean eating or intuitive eating, whatever you want. But if you are eating at the wrong times too frequently and you're jacking with your insulin or your cortisol is all effed up, you're screwing everything up. Like, it doesn't matter what you're following, you're screwing everything up and nothing's going to work for you. And you're going to constantly be confused and baffled as to why that is. So that's, from an education standpoint, really the only things I think, not to give anybody too much. So basic understanding of bioenergetics, no insulin, no cortisol, and I would really know as much as I could about insulin and cortisol and how it works in your body. That might take you, in all honesty, with the internet and YouTube, 30 minutes of your time on each hormone. So 30 minutes on insulin, 30 minutes on cortisol, you'll have a better understanding than most of the population, and it'll greatly help you out.
Yeah, I think every single book that I've read dives pretty deep into insulin and talks about insulin a lot. So they know it's pretty important. Yeah,
it's very, very, very important. So the last thing, I threw this in here. We had one of our athletes post. He had listened to a Joe Rogan podcast. Shaking my head as I say it because, like, I want to make a shirt. Like, do you remember those old commercials for the Holiday Inn where like someone would like break their leg?
I slept at a Holiday Inn last night.
Yep.
I listened to a Joe Rogan podcast.
Exactly. That's exactly. So if you haven't seen the Holiday Inn commercials, some guy would like break his leg on the side of the road, and like the guy would come up and he'd have like a lot of good information. He'd be like, "Oh, we need to splint this, crack that back into place, and make sure hold it, regulate there." And then after, like, the guy's taken care of, and they're like, "Are you a doctor?" He's like, "No, I'm not a doctor, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn last night." That's exactly how I feel about the Joe Rogan podcast. Joe Rogan podcast is amazing. There's a lot of great stuff. I don't listen to it frequently. I've listened to a few episodes here and there, but for the most part, it seems like pretty good. He has good people on, and I've had a lot of good experiences listening to his podcast. But I've also had, when that's your only source of information, and is like, okay, are you a nutrition expert? No, but I did listen to a Joe Rogan podcast. How many times I've gotten that rebuttal, either via email or social media or something like that? Joe Rogan, this so-and-so said this on the Joe Rogan podcast. I almost want to make a shirt about it. Are you an expert? No, but I did listen to the Joe Rogan podcast last night. You need to really dive deeper than that. And so anyway, we had an athlete listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, come to us and talk about how this nutrition expert, who, after I listened to the podcast, by no means was a nutrition expert. I don't even know why he got on the show, to be honest. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but he was talking about how you can't be catabolic and anabolic at the same time, which is essentially a true statement. That's like saying you can't have the light on and the light off in your room at the same time, because that's just a statement of fact. But can the light be on and off at different times during the day? Absolutely. And that's the point he missed. There's not this like forever catabolic state. And I don't want to dive into that too far, or this forever anabolic state. Like that's such 1990s and early 2000 information that guy was peddling that is so outdated and like so far removed from reality, that you really need to like be able to see information like that and be like, that is wrong or outdated or whatever, and not, well, I listened to that. And same with us. You're listening to us right now. Maybe you think we're smart. Maybe you think we're dumb, whatever it is. Don't just take our word for it. I'm telling you to go educate yourself about insulin, cortisol, and bioenergetics. I'm not saying, hey, here's what they are. Here's what you don't need to know anything else. I'm the expert. Don't worry about it. I'm saying go educate yourself about this stuff, and you will be better for it.
Yeah. So, with getting more than one people's opinions, that kind of segues into the book discussion. Whenever people ask like, hey, what would you recommend to learn about nutrition and stuff? And basically what I want to tell them, and sometimes tell them, is not that great of an answer that they want to hear, because I'm like, hey, go read these 3 or 4 books, and then you might get a good idea. Because you can't just read one, because it's one author's kind of research and point of view and specialty. And you can't, and definitely just don't go read articles. I say, hey, do not go searching for articles, because articles are just going to be, somebody needs to put out some sort of information, and it's just going to be the dumbest. Half of my see the just dumbest thing is, I have to really, really resist not commenting when somebody like posts them or shares them on Facebook, because some of them are just absolutely ridiculous, and I don't need to be a Debbie Downer all the time.
Well, I mean, I 100% agree with you. This happens to me and has happened to me over the last several years. So, family members and close friends hitting me up for basically free individualized programming. That's what they want. That's their desire, right? And I think I've talked about this on the podcast before. I used to do it occasionally, depending on the person, and then they wouldn't do the program, and I'd be really pissed. I'd be like, what's your freaking problem? Like that. Anyway, I won't get into that. I just get mad at when people like that's my profession. That's my expertise. I took my time to create that for you and you didn't do it. So I flipped it and I said, you write me a check, and it's different depending on the person. If you have a lot of money, I'm going to ask for a lot of money. If you have a little bit of money, I'm going to ask for a little bit of money, but say, hey, you want a 12-week plan. All right, write me a check for $1,000, whatever's going to hurt that person financially. And then, if you do the program, I'm going to hold on to the check. If you do the program, I won't charge you any money. Like I'll just rip this check up. Glad to do it as a friend or family member. If you don't do the program, you sure as hell, I'm going to cash this check. And like, that's on you for not doing the program. So I started doing that. And that's the same I started doing with business, because people started hitting me up a lot about online business, digital business. What should I do? How should I do it? And now I don't like for people to just sit around and like pick my brain. And so I have a rule. I give 3 books. I say, you read these 3 books. And after you're done, if you actually read all 3 and you come back, we can have the most in-depth conversations about online business you've ever wanted to have in your entire life. If you are unwilling, this is 10 people, probably, I've specifically given this recommendation. 0 have come back and said, I read all 3 books, I'm ready to have that conversation. So it's avoided me having to talk to someone who's not really committed to what they say they want. But that's the same exact thing in the nutrition space. Is like, you want to give some book recommendations, and like, say someone's asking you for some free advice or just hitting you up, and you're like, go read these 3 things. And they're like, well, I didn't actually want to put any work into it. I just, I just wanted like random advice, and wanted to act like I was solving my problem, but not really.
I love your retirement plan. Hey, you read these 3 books, give me a check for $1,000. And if you don't, then hey, I get $1,000.
Exactly. And that's what, and well, it's funny is most people, I think I've had one person to agree to it, and I try and base the amount based off of what I think, If it's like my father-in-law, I'm going to ask for $1,000. If it's like one of my good friends, maybe it's like $50 or something like that. But it's different for every single person. But that's typically how it works. And, I've only had one person, I think, actually take me up on it and do the program.
Well, so I need to start doing that, because I get hit up on stuff like that too.
Yeah, it's a great way to just shut it down or get them the results. Because like, I'm on board with you seeing results. Like, I would love that for you, but you just have to do it. You have to put in the work. And I
can't teach a 3-hour class to you just off the top of my head.
Right. And so did you actually want to recommend any books, or you want to?
Yeah. So I have a few big things for picking out books, because when it's great to have the books, because they're going to give you a lot of science information. There's a lot of them, the really good ones are going to be able to explain it to you in terms you can understand. I have 0 medical background. My degree was in PR and advertising, so I never even took biology in college, but I can still read some of these books and learn a lot from them. And some of the really, really good authors can explain. I think there's even a saying that like, if to truly know something, you should be able to explain it to a 7-year-old and they understand it, or something along those lines.
Einstein, I think he said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it.
Yeah. But we're looking for some of these books. Each author has their own specialty that they study into and focus on, or what their own goals are. So, for example, Dave Osprey, he's the Bulletproof guy. He wrote Headstrong and the Bulletproof Diet. But his whole goal in his diet and nutrition and stuff, at least in Headstrong, was to get his brain to function as optimally as possible, and longevity. He wants to live to be like 120 years old or something. So as far as like our training goes, what we're doing, he's not worried about improving his 1.5 mile time or recovering from heavy lifting sessions. So like little asterisks like that are good to keep in mind, because not one book is going to be the end all be all. And you also have to have your own self application to see what works best for you. But it's good to take away. I mean, every book I've read, I've probably taken away a good 80% of all of their information as like good stuff to know and learn. So my top 3 books that I like to recommend to people, not in order of liking, but in order of best to consume or whatever, would be Wired to Eat. By Rob Wolf. He writes some really good stuff, and Wired to Eat is a really, really good one. That it's fairly easy to read. It covers most of the bases. Rob Wolf's known for paleo and clean eating and stuff like that. But so his is great. Next one, it could fluctuate either way, but would be Plant Paradox by Steve Gundry, something like that.
Definitely Gundry. I just don't remember the first name.
I think it was Steven. Yeah, he's a super smart guy. He was on our podcast, or on the Better Immunology podcast. And his I like so much because he was a retired doctor that was like this world renowned cardiologist, surgeon, and he just said, you know what, I'm going to retire and switch and get into nutrition because I actually want to make a change for all these people that I'm doing open heart surgery from. So his motives were great, and his research was awesome, and he also explains things in a way the best that I know any other book to do. His main asterisk though is also not had anything to do with fitness and is more about fixing people with long-term autoimmune type diseases. So that's his thing. But probably my most favorite book, the reason why I don't recommend it first is because it's so dense in nutrition, and it's a fairly large book, and that's Deep Nutrition by Catherine Shanahan, and hers is it's my all-time favorite. I posted it in the group recently, and
did we have her on the podcast?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, we did. Yeah. Last year.
Sounded familiar.
A handful of other people that I posted recently in our book club also said that they've read it, and they've said it's their all-time favorite as well. And that's because her approach, she doesn't really have any asterisks. It's just a very broad.
She's just great in general. Yeah, she's fun to talk to too. Yeah. Yeah,
her approach was she just went around and studied all of these different like Aboriginal type cultures that are away from Western diets. They've been eating the same way they have for centuries, and they don't have medical care. They still live to their 100, and she tried to figure out why these people are doing so healthy when they don't even have access to the medicine that everybody else has, and everybody else is much more sick. So she really dived really deep into all those things, came away with 4 great concepts, and it's a ton of great information. It's one that I actually really want to go back and reread.
Yeah, those are, I think I've read all of those books, and they are really solid. I don't think I have any further recommendations, because to get to the information I'm talking about, you're going to have to dive into textbooks.
Organic chemistry.
You can do organic chemistry, biochemistry. At a basic level, if you were to go to the NSCA, so that's the National Strength and Conditioning Association, and get any one of their textbooks, or what is it, the publisher? It's called Human Connect. Let me read it real quick. Hold on, it might be on this book right here. Human Kinetics. Maybe look up that publisher instead of a specific organization, because a lot of different organizations use this Human Kinetics, and that's KINETICS. You could look that. They just have some. They're fairly good for reference for coaches and trainers, and then even people just trying to learn more about them stuff. But it will have a very, very basic level of bioenergetics. Like we're talking 10 pages in a chapter, and that's all you need to know. So that kind of stuff. And my only fear is that's my honest recommendation, and I don't think that anyone will actually do it. To go grab a textbook and start reading about glycolysis and lactate and all this other stuff. But you just learn so many interesting things. Maybe this should have been the fact of the week, but there's something called, this is just interesting tidbit that I think that people should know. And this is just if you had the smallest bit of bioenergetic information in your brain, you would just know these kind of things. You hear about lactate, right? So it's this byproduct of muscles functioning, and you normally hear it in some sort of it's this bad thing, right? Lactate builds up and it burns, and then you're sore or whatever like that. That's how it is. And but lactate, because of the Cori cycle, your body can take lactate, shuttle it back to the liver. It can be used as glucose, so converted to energy. That's just crazy to me. And just knowing simple things like that and how your body operates when you're getting sore and what your body's doing, is just really beneficial. And that's just very tip of the iceberg stuff of what you could know, or and how you make your decisions every day. So I unfortunately would have to recommend textbooks. I don't like doing that because I know no one will freaking do it. But anyway, all right, you want to go to the workout?
Yes. So this is one of the new Me Yourself Saturdays, and
disclaimer. Yeah.
Yeah. Disclaimer. Jared did this one with Ashley, right? You guys did it together?
Yeah, we did a test of it, test version.
It's in our show notes, but I have not read it yet, so I have no idea what it is.
Joe is hearing it for the first time. You are hearing it for the first time. If you're signed up for our programming, you technically got to see it a few days before this was published, right? Because the programming loads on Sunday.
Yeah.
But Joe hasn't done it. I've tested it with Ashley. And so I have a lot of great tips and strategies, and Joe can chime in just from his experience as an athlete. But here it is, and ask any questions if you feel like I don't explain it well. So it's 10 rounds for time so it's called the Confused 2K, 10 rounds for time, 200-meter row or run, and then you're going to do a front rack barbell hold for the duration of however long that 200-meter took. So if you run 200 meters and that takes you a minute, you're going to take a barbell in the front rack position and just hold it standing there, just standing up in the front rack position for however long it took. So if it took a minute, you hold it for a minute. And if you get more tired towards like round 9 and it takes you 2.5 minutes, then you're going to hold it for 2.5 minutes. And the weights are competitor. You should be at your body weight. Established athletes, 65 to 75% of your body weight. Recruit, 45 to 65% of your body weight, or even less. So those are things like I think that you should experiment with. Do you feel like you understand the workout from my description?
Yeah, I think actually it's fairly simple.
Yeah, it's not hard to do, but it's very difficult. It sucks. It's not a fun one, should I say? So from having done it, here are my quick tips I'll go over. Experiment with the weights before you start. So like I would even maybe like before you get started in your warm up, if you're like, I want to try the competitor, so I'm 185 pounds. If I like load 185 pounds on the barbell and then standing in the front rack position, just stand there for a minute or minute and a half and see what that feels like before you commit to doing 10 rounds of it. So experiment with the weight. Second is go fast. When is that not one of my recommendations? But just the slower you go, the longer you have to hold, and the hold sucks way worse than the row or the run. So try and get those things done as fast as you can. Don't lock out your knees. Absolutely. This one's super important. I'm going to have to put an asterisk everywhere in Team Builder and like a checkbox. I will not lock out my knees in this workout because people can easily have a tendency to, it's easier for you to stabilize your extremity if it's bone on bone. So like arm locked out overhead or knees locked out because it's bone on bone. Your muscles aren't having to really do any work. You might end up doing that in this workout if it gets too hard for you. And guess what? You are going to pass out. You're going to pass out with 185 pounds in the front rack position. So do not lock your knees. Make sure that there's always a little bit of bounce. Maybe every 15 to 20 seconds, just do a little bend or jump. Not jump, but you know what I mean? Like a little like just a up and down, like a few inches to make sure your knees are loose and they're not getting locked out. And then keep your elbows up. That's the only thing. Don't start caving down and rounding your upper back. Keep your elbows real high. Keep your upper back straight. And I think those would be my best tips. And the only other tip I have is I tested this with Ashley, but we did it as a partner workout, and you can too. So, and you can hold for as long as that person did the row. We did it rowing. So that's how we did it. Ashley would row, and I would be holding in the front rack the entire time she was rowing. And then the second she was finished, I'd put it down. I'd hop on the rower. She'd pick up the weight, her own weight, and then she would hold as long as I was rowing. And so it's a great partner workout too. You don't have to do a partner workout. Obviously, it works either way, but it worked really well in that regard because I experimented with her. She doesn't know this. I experimented with her a little bit towards the end. I was watching her pace on the rower, and she was keeping a pretty good pace. But when we got to the later rounds, her pace started to slow. And so I just let off some audible sounds of discomfort in holding the weight. This was very intentional. I was just like, I don't typically make noises like that, like suffering noises. I try to suffer in silence, but I did it on purpose. And I got about 15 seconds faster. Her 500-meter pace dropped by about 15 seconds when I would do that. So that's why I love it as a partner workout because... Did
you tell her?
She doesn't even know. So she'll probably listen to this and be like, oh, okay. But she got significantly faster because she knew her teammate was suffering. And so it's just good. It's a good psychological strategy. But that's all I got. In, hearing the workout, do you have any tips or tricks?
Yeah, that partner one, that sounds pretty good. But doing it solo, so it's definitely going to be tricky. So I recommend athletes to strengthen their top and mid back, do front rack holds, and it's spicy. I haven't done it for body weight, so body weight for a minute would be rough. Even 135 for a minute is pretty dang tough. So in my mind, what I'm first thinking is, okay, I'm going to want to go fast on the row, but not max out, because then I'm just going to be toast and you're just going to burn out real quick. So like
it's
85, 90%.
Meet yourself Saturday, man. It's like the perfect like culmination of you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. It's like you go slow. Okay, fine. The row doesn't hurt at all. That the hold, the isometric contraction we're having, that's going to suck. It's like, okay, I'm going to go really fast where I don't have the hold as long. It's like, well, then the hold's going to suck because you're super tired and you can barely breathe and you're holding something in the front rack position. You trying to keep your abs really tight. So yeah, it's perfect. I love the workout.
So yeah, I'm talking a sustainable 85 to 90%, because it's still going to be about a minute. I'm not completely sure. How long were you taking?
I think we did a little bit different distance.
Okay.
We did the experimented version. So
Okay.
I don't really remember.
So yeah, 85, 90%, then hold the bar, and then I'd probably take a good 20-second rest in between, 20, 30 seconds, because even though I'm costing myself 30 seconds, it's still going to help me go faster on the rower and still be able to hold somewhat. But yeah, that's...
I wonder if I should note no resting allowed. Or if you rest, so say you rode for a minute and then you rest 30 seconds before you hop on the bar, I feel like that time should technically go onto the row.
Well, if I jump from the rower right to the bar, then I rest from the bar back to the rower. It'll just take me a long time to strap and unstrap my feet.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't actually care if people want to rest in between. That's fine with me, because there's no hiding from this workout. There's no time cap, so it's just you're gonna get it done. Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Cool. All right, and so that's I don't even need to ask, because that's why people should sign up for Garage Gym Athlete, because of that workout alone. It's gonna be awesome, and you get it in the app fully like delivered and ready. Anything else I'm missing?
No, I don't think so. I think this is probably one of our longer episodes.
That's a long one, but it's a good one. Anytime you get us talking about nutrition, we could go pretty deep. Well, that's it for this week. I hope everyone enjoyed it and get after it and get some good training in. Thanks for listening to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.